Imagine two people, same starting point, same city, same average income, same education. 20 years later, one of them has built a net worth of several $1,000,000. The other is still living paycheck to paycheck despite working just as hard, sometimes harder. What actually happened in those 20 years? It wasn't a lottery ticket. It wasn't a rich relative. In the vast majority of cases, when researchers and psychologists actually study self-made wealthy individuals, the answer comes down to something surprisingly simple and almost invisible from the outside. They think about money differently, not just budgeting differently, not just investing differently. Their entire mental relationship with risk, time, failure, and identity operates on a different operating system. And in this video, we're going to open up that operating system, piece by piece. Welcome back to Wealthy Mind. This is one of our deepest dives yet, and if you stay with us through this entire video, I promise you'll walk away seeing money and your own decisions around it in a completely different way. Grab a coffee, get comfortable, because we're going deep. Let's start with the first major mental shift, how the wealthy think about risk. Most people think of risk as something to be avoided entirely. Don't invest, it's risky. Don't start a business, it's risky. Don't leave a stable job, it's risky. And to be fair, this instinct isn't irrational. It comes from a very real evolutionary survival mechanism. Our brains are wired to prioritize avoiding loss over acquiring gain. Psychologists call this loss aversion, and it's one of the most well-documented biases in behavioral economics. Studies suggest that, psychologically, the pain of losing a certain amount of money is felt roughly twice as intensely as the pleasure of gaining that same amount. Which means, for most people, the fear of losing $1,000 feels stronger than the excitement of gaining $1,000, even though mathematically they're equal and opposite. Here's the problem with that wiring in a modern economy. It makes doing nothing feel safe, when in many cases, doing nothing is actually the riskiest option of all. Keeping all your money in a checking account that earns essentially no interest while inflation quietly erodes its purchasing power every single year feels safe because nothing visibly happens, no dramatic loss, no scary chart going down. But over 20 or 30 years, that safe choice can result in a much worse outcome than a diversified long-term investment portfolio that experiences ups and downs along the way but grows substantially over time. The wealthy don't necessarily take on more risk than everyone else. What they actually do is redefine what risk even means. To them, the real risk isn't volatility, it's inaction, dependency, and staying still while the world moves. There's a story that's often told about Phil Knight, the co-founder of Nike. In the company's early years, Knight famously operated on razor-thin margins, constantly reinvesting nearly every dollar of profit back into the business, to the point where, at times, the company was dangerously close to running out of cash, even as sales were growing. From the outside, this looked terrifyingly risky, but Knight understood something that most people don't intuitively grasp. In a growing business, the risk of moving too slowly, of not reinvesting, not scaling, not seizing the opportunity, was actually greater than the risk of the cash crunches that came from aggressive reinvestment. He wasn't reckless, he had simply recalibrated his definition of safe. This brings us to the second major mental shift: time horizon. If you ask most people to imagine their financial future, they tend to think in terms of months, maybe a year if they're being ambitious. What can I do with my money this month, this year? The wealthy, particularly those who built wealth through investing or business ownership, tend to think in terms of decades. And this isn't just a vague, be patient platitude. It's a fundamentally different lens through which every decision gets filtered. Let's make this concrete with a thought experiment. Imagine someone offers you two choices. Choice A, receive $1,000 right now. Choice B, receive $3,000, but you have to wait 3 years.
Researchers have run countless variations of this experiment, sometimes called intertemporal choice studies, and a significant portion of people choose the smaller, immediate amount, even when the delayed amount is mathematically far superior. This isn't because people are bad at math, it's because our brains discount the future heavily. The further away a reward is, the less real it feels, almost as if it belongs to a different person entirely. Some researchers have even described this as a kind of psychological disconnect from our future self, as if you're making a gift to a stranger rather than a decision for yourself.
If you're enjoying this audiobook and learning something valuable, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. It helps us bring you more life-changing finance content and keeps you connected with our future uploads. Wealthy individuals, particularly those with an investing or entrepreneurial mindset, train themselves to close this gap. They develop what's sometimes called future self-continuity, a strong psychological connection to the person they'll be in 10, 20, 30 years. And here's the fascinating part. Studies have found that when people are shown age-progressed images of themselves, essentially a digital preview of what they might look like decades from now, they report being more willing to save for retirement. Just seeing a visual representation of their future self makes that future feel more real, more connected to who they are right now. The wealthy, in a sense, have built that connection internally without needing a photo to do it. Every dollar they consider spending or investing gets mentally run through a simple question: how does this affect the person I'm building toward? Consider the story of Ann Scheiber, a name that comes up often in discussions of long-term investing, and for good reason. Ann worked as an auditor for the IRS for decades, never earning a particularly high salary, and retired with a modest pension in the 1940s. From that point on, she began investing a portion of her savings into stocks, primarily well-established companies that paid dividends, and crucially, she reinvested every single dividend back into more shares, without exception, for over 50 years. She lived an extremely modest life, by most accounts quite frugally, not because she had to, but because her relationship with money was oriented entirely around this long-term project she'd set in motion. When she passed away in the early 1990s, her portfolio, built from a modest starting amount and decades of patient compounding, was worth over $20 million. She didn't get lucky with a single stock. She didn't time the market. She simply operated on a multi-decade time horizon that almost nobody else around her was operating on, and let compounding do what compounding does given enough time. Now let's talk about the third major mental shift, and this one might be the most psychologically important of all: how the wealthy relate to failure. For most people, failure, particularly financial failure, feels deeply personal. A failed business, a bad investment, a financial setback, these things often get internalized not just as "this didn't work," but as "I am a failure," or "I'm not the kind of person who succeeds at this." This is what psychologists sometimes call conflating your actions with your identity. But here's what's fascinating when you study the biographies of self-made entrepreneurs and investors. Failure shows up constantly. It's not the exception, it's almost universal. What's different isn't the absence of failure, it's the relationship to it. Where most people experience a setback and think, "this proves something bad about who I am," people with a wealth-building mindset tend to think, "this proves something about that specific approach in that specific situation. What does it teach me for the next attempt?" There's a well-known story about the founder of KFC, Colonel Harlan Sanders, who by most accounts faced rejection from hundreds of restaurants when trying to sell his chicken recipe and franchise concept, well into his 60s after a series of earlier business ventures that had failed entirely. By any conventional measure, at that point in his life, he had every reason to consider himself a failure. Multiple failed businesses, no financial safety net, an age at which most people are thinking about retirement, not starting over. And yet, the story goes that he continued approaching restaurant after restaurant, refining his pitch, learning from each rejection, until eventually the model worked, and worked spectacularly.
Whether every detail of this story is told with perfect historical accuracy or has been polished over time into something closer to legend, the underlying pattern it illustrates is real and well documented across many self-made entrepreneurs. An extraordinary tolerance for repeated rejection, combined with a refusal to let any single rejection, or even dozens of them, become a verdict on personal worth. This matters for everyday financial decisions too, not just entrepreneurship. Someone who tries budgeting, fails to stick with it for a month, and concludes, "I'm just bad with money, I'll never change," has fallen into the identity trap. Someone who tries budgeting, finds it didn't work, and thinks, "Okay, that specific system didn't fit my life, what would work better?" is operating with the failure as feedback mindset. Same outcome, completely different trajectory from that point forward. Let's move to the fourth mental shift, how the wealthy think about spending versus investing, and specifically the concept of opportunity cost. Most people, when they consider a purchase, think about it in isolation. Can I afford this? Do I want this? The wealthy, and this is a learnable habit, not an innate trait, tend to add a third question. What else could this money become if I didn't spend it on this? This isn't about guilt or deprivation, and this distinction is really important. It's not you're bad for wanting nice things. It's about awareness. If a $50 monthly expense redirected into an investment account earning a reasonable long-term average return could become a meaningful sum over 20 or 30 years due to compounding, then every time that $50 is spent elsewhere, there's an invisible cost, not in the sense of guilt, but in the sense of an alternative future that quietly didn't happen. The wealthy aren't necessarily more disciplined in some moralistic sense. They've simply made this invisible cost more visible to themselves, which changes the felt weight of small decisions. There's an interesting parallel here in the story of Ingvar Kamprad, the founder of IKEA, who, despite building one of the most successful furniture retail companies in the world, was known for decades for extremely modest personal spending habits, flying economy class, staying in budget accommodations, driving an older car long after he had more than enough wealth to live any way he wanted. When asked about this, accounts suggest his reasoning wasn't about scarcity or fear. It was about consistency between his personal habits and the values he wanted to embody, and an awareness that every dollar not spent on personal luxury was a dollar that could be reinvested into the business, into people, into the next opportunity. The opportunity cost framework had become so internalized that it wasn't even a decision anymore. It was simply how he saw money.
A quick reminder, if you find this content useful and want to continue your journey toward financial knowledge and success, hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss an upload. Now, let's address something important. None of this means you should never spend money on things that bring you joy, comfort, or meaning. That would be its own kind of dysfunction, sometimes called money dysmorphia or extreme scarcity thinking, where someone with substantial financial resources still feels unable to enjoy any of it, trapped by the very habits that built their wealth in the first place. The goal isn't austerity for its own sake. The goal is intentionality, making spending decisions consciously with full awareness of the trade-offs, rather than by default, out of habit, or to fill an emotional gap. This brings us to the fifth and final mental shift we'll cover today: identity-based financial behavior, and specifically the difference between goals and systems. Most personal finance advice focuses on goals. Save $10,000, pay off this debt, reach this net worth by this age. Goals are useful for direction, but they have a well-documented weakness. Once achieved, or once abandoned, they lose their motivational pull. You can't be in progress toward a goal you've already hit, or one you've already given up on. What tends to characterize people who build and, importantly, maintain wealth over the long term isn't goals, it's identity-driven systems. Instead of, "I'm trying to save $500 a month," the internal framing becomes, "I'm someone who pays myself first automatically every month no matter what." Notice the difference. One is a target with an endpoint. The other is a description of who you are, which has no endpoint, because it's not something you complete, it's something you continue being.
James Clear, in his work on habit formation, describes this as the difference between outcome-based identity and process-based identity. Every time you act in alignment with that identity, even in small ways, you cast what he calls a vote for the type of person you're becoming. Every time you act against it, you cast a vote the other way. Wealth, in this framing, isn't really the goal at all. It's simply the natural byproduct of enough votes cast in the same direction for long enough. So, let's bring this all together. We've covered 5 mental shifts: redefining risk, recognizing that inaction often carries more long-term risk than thoughtful action, even though it doesn't feel that way; extending your time horizon, building a genuine psychological connection to your future self, so long-term decisions feel like they're for you, not a stranger; reframing failure, separating your actions from your identity, so setbacks become data rather than verdicts; making opportunity cost visible, not for guilt, but for awareness, so that small, recurring decisions get weighed against their long-term alternatives; and shifting from goals to identity-based systems, so that positive financial behavior becomes self-sustaining rather than something that requires constant willpower and motivation. Here's the most important thing to understand about everything we've just discussed. None of these are personality traits you're either born with or not. They're cognitive patterns, ways of thinking that can be noticed, practiced, and gradually internalized the same way any skill is built. You don't need to overhaul your entire mindset overnight. You simply need to start noticing, just noticing at first, which of these patterns you're currently operating from in the small financial decisions you make every single day. Awareness is always the first step. The shifts in behavior tend to follow naturally once the underlying mental framework changes. If this video gave you a new lens to look at your own relationship with money, that's exactly what it was designed to do. The Millionaire Mindset isn't a secret club, and it's not about how much money is currently in your bank account. It's about how you think, starting today, regardless of where you're starting from. If you found this valuable, subscribe to Wealthy Mind for more deep dives into the psychology of money and wealth, and we'll see you in the next one.